Hey everybody, with the Consumer Technology Association, I'm Tyler Suiters. We are the owners and the producers of CES, the largest, the most influential tech event in the world. We are here to help you get CES ready. The big show is January 7th through the 10th, as always, in Las Vegas. Today, we are addressing the topic of cryptocurrency. Now, CES is where you'll find the latest in blockchain technology and how it's being incorporated into business solutions. And this is a technology that means greater security for a panoply of plays here, from think of food safety and the supply chain all the way to payment processing and data sharing, multiple valuable uses. And today, two different points of view on the crypto sector. First of all, we're talking to one of CNN Business's digital correspondents, someone who writes daily about the markets and the blue chip companies and is on CNNI's business programs regularly and has a real focus on digital currency, especially where we've been in the last year and where we may be heading over the next 5 years or so. Also, a conversation with cryptocurrency startup Zocial. Their co-founder is a Silicon Valley microprocessing veteran, also a holder of multiple patents. So what in the world is he doing in the crypto sector, and why is he so optimistic? All of that is coming up on today's edition of CES Tech Talk. With us now from New York is Paul LaMonica. He is digital correspondent for CNN Business. You have probably read his content, whether you realize it or not. Paul, glad you're with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
You have been neck deep in this topic for a number of years now. Chart its path since you've been keeping a close eye on cryptocurrency and the larger digital money space.
Yeah, I think, Bitcoin is obviously, first and foremost, I think, the main crypto that people follow. And it's really been fascinating to watch what has happened to Bitcoin prices in the past couple of years when we got close to, $20,000 at the end of 2017 and then came crashing back down to earth last year. But it's had a nice rebound, even though it's remained pretty volatile this year. And I think, that you're starting to get this sense that Bitcoin may still not ever be a true form of payment that many of the evangelists want it to be. I think it's kind of like a crypto. I mean, it's a currency on steroids. It's, something that I think a lot of people just love to trade like a stock because, I mean, let's be honest here, cryptocurrencies move in a much more dramatic fashion than old-fashioned paper currencies issued by the governments and central banks. I mean,
for better or worse, right? That goes both ways, exactly. Certainly. So to your point, if it's not a viable currency just yet, or if crypto isn't a viable currency writ large, is it then a viable commodity and viable investment?
Yeah. Exactly. I think that it could be something that is better suited for commodity investors and people that really have a very high tolerance for risk. I mean, you look at how it has surged back this year. I mean, it's now trading at about, 7,500 or so, and that's sharply higher than where it ended 2018, but it's well off the highs from earlier this year as well when, we got close to, over 12,000 again. So it's something that moves extremely dramatically. Obviously, it's very headline driven. I think some of the skepticism about Facebook and Libra lately has maybe hurt Bitcoin, even though in prior months maybe the introduction of Libra really helped Bitcoin because I think it in many investors' minds legitimized or helped make Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies writ large a real thing. If Facebook is willing to make this big bet with Libra on cryptocurrencies, it's harder to ignore the growing trend of cryptocurrencies as a store of value, if not necessarily an acceptable mass market digital payment.
So last month in one of your pieces, Paul, I saw this great tension point within there where you're talking to an industry analyst who says, well, just by nature, less and less Bitcoin is mined year over year, and so the inherent value will grow, right? There's less of a commodity year after year to some degree. I know that's scalable. I won't get into the math, but there's the quote in your very next line, and I'll paraphrase here, is something like, of course, this is ridiculously volatile and who knows what will happen next year, much less next week, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, to go further, I think what I said after that was it's not necessarily, though, the Wild West anymore, because this is something that has validity because of things like Facebook and Libra, as well as futures trading on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange.
The broader landscape.
Big brokers.
Right.
Yeah, big brokers have, embraced it as well with futures trading for the likes of Schwab and E-Trade and, TD Ameritrade, which is in the process of getting bought by Schwab. But I think, really, when you look at how there is that aspect of Bitcoin mining, that it is something that I think savvy investors do need to realize, that unlike a paper currency that you have the Fed, the ECB, the Bank of Japan, et cetera, turning on the proverbial printing presses, because of Bitcoin mining and the way that it's hard-coded into, blockchain software, that there are only a certain amount of Bitcoins that will be mined, and the number that gets produced every couple of years is cut in half. It does wind up creating a bit of a supply shock that, some people have said is similar to when you have oil supply shock. So that can artificially boost prices, and that may be something that we're already seeing this year in anticipation of that sort of quadrennial event, and could happen. It could extend into next year.
Mm-hmm. You've mentioned more than once already, Paul, Libra, right? The Facebook announcement earlier this year. I think it's generally well understood in this space what Facebook is doing in cryptocurrency. How about the why? What's your take on why a global giant in the tech space like this wants to be in crypto right now?
Yeah, I think Facebook is obviously very savvy and recognizes that it has billions of users on not just the Facebook platform, but on Instagram and WhatsApp as well, and that digital commerce is a potential way for Facebook to generate even more revenue, make it maybe less dependent on advertising, and having a viable digital currency that it can have it be pegged more to the dollar and not be as subject to the volatility that Bitcoin and Ether and Litecoin and other cryptocurrencies have those pretty wild dramatic swings. That this could be good for Facebook and just add a revenue stream for them that they might need. But of course, the big question is going to be, how will not just consumers but regulators view any Libra efforts from Facebook? Obviously, we've already had a lot of skepticism, because it's not exactly a huge surprise or secret that Facebook has run into a lot of regulatory headaches and bad PR over the past couple of years.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was heading, Paul. Is we're here in Washington, D.C., and policy is often first and foremost in conversations. So, although cryptocurrency and the digital side of things were under some scrutiny, and there was a level of recognition among policymakers here, Congress really didn't sink its teeth into it until the Facebook announcement, right? So how does that play out across all the players in this space? Because it seems like everybody will have to abide by whatever and if Congress takes action, regulation is put into place.
Yeah, I think that clearly, as we've seen, with not just concerns about regulation for cryptocurrencies, but regulations for tech writ large, we are in an environment right now where the Silicon Valley firms and the big companies up in the state of Washington, Amazon and Microsoft, obviously, they're not as beloved by regulators and politicians the way they might have been in the past, even though a lot of these companies are still applauded for being innovators and creators of jobs. I think big tech has, in some respects, almost replaced the big financial firms after 2008 as a pretty easy sort of target and whipping post. So all of the skepticism about Facebook and what we've seen also with Amazon and Google and Apple, I don't think that's going to end anytime soon. And it seems pretty bipartisan, obviously. I mean, there are a lot of Democratic leaders like Elizabeth Warren has been pretty outspoken, but we all know that President Trump, has a bit of an axe to grind against some of the big tech companies as well. I mean, we know how much he dislikes Amazon because he conflates Amazon with Jeff Bezos owning the Washington Post. But I really think that the big tech companies are going to face more regulation in all of their businesses, and that's going to include Bitcoin and any other cryptocurrency moves that they make, like Facebook is doing with Libra.
So looking across the entire crypto landscape for a moment, Paul, you have the benefit as a journalist of talking to the smartest people in the room or outside the room. I don't want to put guardrails around it. But in this space, what are you gleaning from them as you peer around the corner to the next, say, 5 years in the crypto and digital space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think that you are going to see people probably finally start to use crypto a little bit more than they have, maybe as a form of payment and not necessarily just as an investment. I don't think, again, that you're ever going to get to a point where people are going to necessarily feel comfortable buying a loaf of bread at the local grocery store using fractions of Bitcoin or paying for their Netflix subscription every month with Bitcoin, for example. But I do think that you might have more companies that are going to adopt Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies as a viable form of payment. I mean, that's something that you've seen some retailers, Overstock has made some pretty big efforts in that area. And there are other retailers as well that I think may follow suit both online and offline. So I think that is the trend probably that's going to be worth watching, that it's going to slowly become a bigger part of actual, commerce and digital payments and not necessarily just this trading asset that we've talked about. But I think by and large, it's still going to be something that's more of a plaything for sophisticated traders and not ever going to replace paper fiat currency.
Is there, Paul, any kind of trend you can identify that gives you insight into who the big players will be, then who's going to emerge from this pack in the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously you can't ignore Facebook because it has made this big move with Libra, even though it's been pretty controversial. I'm sort of surprised that you haven't seen as much on the crypto front from the likes of Amazon, who would seemingly be an obvious contender to want to do more in digital currencies just because of the fact that they are obviously the largest e-commerce firm and that they are expanding aggressively into other aspects of retail as well with their own physical stores and owning Whole Foods. So I think that Amazon is a company that you'd have to watch. And then obviously Google as well, because with that alphabet structure, they have the flexibility to be more experimental and really invest in things that may not pay off for a long period of time, but they have that willingness to make those sort of moonshot bets. And I think that will just continue in the years ahead.
Sounds like you're summing it up by saying, look to the FANG, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, not Netflix. I don't think they're, obviously. But no, I mean, we all love to talk about the FANG stocks because of them being sort of the big momentum plays. But I think at the end of the day, it really is Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, and Alphabet that are the main companies that are dominating tech right now. I mean, Netflix gets thrown into that group as a momentum play, but they are a much more somewhat simple story to understand because they really are mainly about streaming media. They don't seem to have aspirations to be becoming a major cloud company or a retail giant the way that some of these other companies have done, obviously.
We'll look to your upcoming stories to propose some alternate acronyms for us as we refer to the giants. Paul LaMonica, digital correspondent with CNN Business. Hey, a blast, Paul. Thanks so much for the insight. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me on.
Joining us today from Silicon Valley is the CEO and co-founder of Zocial, Rick Bleszynski. And Rick, it's good to have you with us today.
Good to have us with you as well.
You are no stranger to the startup realm. You're a Silicon Valley veteran, to say the least. Let's start by talking about exactly what Zocial is, what your company is, and its place in the ecosystem right now. So, sort of your overall vision for what this company is.
Okay, so at the high level, Zocial is working on transforming the internet, which is one of the greatest inventions of all time, into the new global network of trust. And that is at the very high level of our vision. Again, the internet is one of the greatest inventions of all time. However, it is far from perfect, and there are lots of room for improvement, such as privacy, centralization, security, performance, etc., especially around the social network. So what is this global network of trust? Who do we trust? Data privacy and trust among the many large companies are diminishing in the past several years. There are several technologies that are shaping the internet, and one of them is blockchain. With blockchain, the trust actually transfers from the intermediary entities, institutions, middlemen, to mathematics and cryptography. So we are not eliminating the intermediaries, but in order to survive, they will adapt to the new technology, and most of them and some of them are adapting to the new technology.
So when you get into issues of privacy and especially security, Rick, that's really where blockchain has its sweet spot, right? The real value delivery of blockchain, would you say, is pinned to security?
That is correct. And also, there is quite a few features and functionalities that blockchain addresses. We can get into some of the more attractive one with respect to zero knowledge proof and so forth, that you don't really have to show so much of your privacy to be able to achieve something, right? So it's a very, very good technology.
So let's talk about the application software that Zocial creates as dealing with social communities and enterprises, in your company's words, augmented by permissioned blockchain. So if you would delve into that a bit, Rick, and talk about the practical applications there and also some of the challenges of the internet as we know it now that this addresses.
Yeah, so Zocial, again, as the name applies to, it comes from a Zen social, which is calm and peaceful social media. So the applications that we are building on top of blockchain comprises of three different areas. One of them is social media, and then we combine social media with a mobile commerce, e-commerce, and financial services, in particular in the fintech services area. So this is a social media, commerce, payment, fintech services in one app. It's a super app that we are currently working on with a huge customers, actually a community based in Asia right now.
Is there a particular geography that this seems most apt for, or where this is offering the most market application, or perhaps the best market application, where it's needed most? You mentioned Asia, Rick, is that certainly comes to mind, but is it possible to geo-target this to some degree?
Well, the interesting part about this type of application is that you really want to include all levels of society. If you look at Asia right now, specifically in Southeast Asia, I compare Southeast Asia similar to what China was 10 years ago, right? If you look at China right now, the number of middle class out of China, I mean, it's just mind-boggling, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. And this is where Southeast Asia is right now. Recent research from Google and Temasek throw a number that the Southeast Asia internet economy is to grow to 240 billion from 2000, by 2025, up from 72 billion just last year.
And that's U.S. dollars.
That is U.S. dollars.
Okay.
That's right. So, and in particular, to include all level of society, there are a lot of people out there that are underserved, underbanked, even unbanked, right? So, but they are yet digital savvy. They have smartphone, mobile phones, smart devices. And in particular, what's very important about this region is the median age. The median age is under 30 years old. And they picked up digital, much faster than other regions.
Mm-hmm. So, taking that somewhat unique marketplace, Rick, then how are you driving a market strategy, or what's your value proposition for that particular group, if that's the growth area you see?
Okay, so one of the biggest value prop is that we have engaged with the largest social community, and I believe it could be in the world. This community specifically, it consists of more than 91 million members. It was founded about 100 years ago. And within that 91 million members, they have sub-organizations and subdivisions of this community. And one of the divisions is called the Business Owners, Entrepreneurs Division. Within the business owners itself, there are approximately about 3 million business owners. And that is our biggest value proposition right now, is that we are working with these huge communities. Even most countries in the world, they don't have 91 million people. Mm-hmm. And let alone, providing them with the best of the best and the latest technology. And I mentioned before, the 3 million business owners, and majority of those business owners are the micro, small, medium businesses. And this is the key to growing a country or a region or a global economy, is you need to increase the level of human capital, especially at the micro and small businesses. And that's where we are targeting right now.
Mm-hmm. Your background is fascinating, Rick. As I mentioned, a long time Silicon Valley insider, right, within the tech sector.
Yes.
Your background is in the processor world, in the networking, silicon, the systems area. How are you applying that rich experience in what was a constantly evolving milieu into this blockchain sector and the value proposition that you're offering there at Zocial?
Okay, so that's very, very good questions, because right now the blockchain and this new, I call it the next transforming the internet to be the global network of trust. This one right now, it's only a matter of when we will hit a mass adoption. Enterprise, communities, big companies, small companies, everybody is involved in this blockchain world right now. So today, if you look at the internet, and with my background, which is the infrastructure of the internet, if you look at the internet, that is 4 or 5 decades old. And the internet was built primarily on applications such as email, file transfers, protocols, and so forth. Yes, it has evolved quite a bit in the last 3 to 4 decades, but it wasn't built for the applications that we are really throwing at it today. So the way I looked at it, once you solve the protocol, the interoperabilities, as well as the consensus algorithm within the blockchain realm and platform, it's not done. You still have the layer, what I call the layer 0. Once you solve layer 1, layer 2, transaction per second, deterministics, and all that good stuff, what happened in layer 0? And that is where I think the internet and the processor backgrounds, gives us quite an edge in that layer 0 area.
Mm-hmm. Rick, final question for you. Your CES 2020 strategy. Whom are you looking to engage? What are you doing to approach CES 2020 from a strategic standpoint?
Okay. At CES, we are hoping to meet with much more communities out there, be it social, sports group, or others that shares a common interest. Even large enterprises that we are hoping to engage with soon in Southeast Asia. These guys have 200,000 more employees. That in itself can be considered as a community right there. So we're also continuously looking for value-add services to add to our super app for our large community based in Southeast Asia. And therefore, I hope to find some useful, innovative companies and technologies that we can work with and be partners and add some value, more value into the super app. Last but not least, we're also fundraising and hope to meet with potential investors. So it's the community, the enterprise, the partners, new technology, and the investors.
CES is where business gets done, no question. Rick Bleszynski is CEO and co-founder of Zocial, a startup in the red-hot field of blockchain. Rick, enjoy the conversation, and we'll see you in about a month at CES.
Thank you very much, Tyler.
All right, coming up next time on CES Tech Talk, you hear us say it with regularity. Every company today is or needs to be a tech company. It's almost a strategy at this point. So a conversation with two companies you may not associate with technology, but will be at CES 2020, CVS Health and also Weber Grill. As for the latter, this is a company that has been around for more than half a century. We will discuss the what and the why this American company, that's an icon in the grilling and outdoor cooking sector, sees such value in technology growth as its future.
It is rapidly evolving, as you and your audience know as well as I ever could. The appearance of technology, whether it's in the kitchen or on the patio in food preparation, is evolving rapidly.
That is next time on CES Tech Talk. Now, of course, we want you to be CES ready, so do yourself a favor. You can subscribe to this CES Tech Talk podcast. That way, you won't miss a single episode as we're getting you ready for the 2020 show. Speaking of, the dates, again, January 7th through the 10th in Las Vegas. The information you need to help plan and prepare is all at the website ces.tech. That is ces.tech. As always, none of this is possible without the true stars of our podcast, senior studio engineer John Lindsay and our executive producer, Tina Anthony. Y'all are the best in the business. I'm Tyler Suiters. Let's talk tech again soon.